For even the most skeptical fan, there are 5 things the auto-running sequel to Super Meat Boy does that you have to admit are done better this time around. If you're watching this with the preconceived notion that Forever is a bad game, that's fine, your tastes are your own, but I encourage you to see this list through to the end to find out if it deserves a second chance. Lots of times when I'm playing a video game, I'll fall in love with 1 or 2 areas that I want to play over and over and over again. So I respect and appreciate any title that gives me a reason to constantly revisit my favorite places. In Dark Souls 2, you're able to use an item called a bonfire aesthetic to increase the difficulty of any one area in the game. This will respawn all bosses and items, giving you the perfect excuse to dive back in and do it all over again. But most games settle for something more simple, New Game Plus. Except that Forever's New Game Plus gives you the opportunity to see level chunks that you mathematically couldn't have seen in one playthrough. They easily could have settled on making the bare minimum amount of stages, but thankfully, Tommy had very unreasonable expectations. I had a great time in Tetanus World punching crates to carve a path forward before nosediving off of a fishhook, so I'll be New Game Plusing repeatedly just to experience it all again. Platformer bosses are really hard to do well. There's a time and place for it, I guess, but I'm getting really tired of the formulaic, Simon Says styled, 3 hits and they're dead baddies from the Mario games. I want a fight that's going to keep me quick on my feet and force me to think and act in equal measure to defeat tough, intimidating foes. If you've seen my video on platformer bosses, you'll already know I enjoyed Forever's fights quite a lot. The other game's battles were decent, but more or less felt like masked versions of normal levels, whereas the sequels are interwoven seamlessly with the running gameplay mechanic. Just like the normal areas, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much more fun these battles are when you're forced to take these interesting detours because you can't stop. Dying against Big Slugger was almost a relief, because it meant I got to fight him just a bit longer. Story is a term used very loosely here. Obviously, SMBF isn't a visual novel, but there's enough cute, silly, and endearing moments that it starts to feel kind of like a well-made short before a Pixar film. Development and character growth are very hard to achieve in more lighthearted stories, especially if there's no dialogue, but we get just enough to want to auto-run this thing to the very end. Seeing Dr. Fetus slowly grow from spiteful captor to a sympathetic father figure is beautiful to see, even if it's a one-for-one ripoff of the Hound and Arya from Game of Thrones. Hell, they even look alike. Regardless of what you think of Forever, there is no denying the sheer talent on display in its cutscenes and animations. The original will always have a place in our hearts, calling to a simpler time and evoking old memories of perusing Newgrounds for f***ed up shit. But I was unabashedly floored by what I saw in this game. Characters were alive with color and emotion. Sometimes, the camera would pan across a room, not unlike an animation from a Studio Trigger anime. Even the way the menus retract and swap between themselves is a delight to see, as is the spinning globe in the World Select. While the gameplay's aesthetic itself suffers from a level editor look, everything else is spot on. All of us now want a dedicated show, and it motivated us to get through the next impossible stage just to see what great cutscene awaited us at the end. When Tommy confirmed on his Discord and livestream that the roster forever would consist entirely of Meat Boy characters, a lot of us were disappointed, and understandably so. Even the Flash game had a Castle Crasher in it. Whilst it's sad to not have special guest characters again, especially after all the amazing indies that have come out since Meat Boy 1, the new warp zones are loud and disruptive in all of the best ways. These things are in a completely different art style than anything in the main stages. They rip right through space and time, especially your time, because these things are like impossible at first. What's crazy is how each of them retains the auto-running theme of the vanilla game whilst doing something new with it, like the Mortal Kombat-inspired tower climb, or the really zoomed-in battle with Little Slugger reminiscent of the smaller levels in the last game. For a game with no special guest characters in it, it's certainly weird that these warp zones feel much more out there and alien than anything in the first game. Here's a video I did on how platformer bosses can be much better than they currently are. I really appreciate you watching this, and if you felt you derived a lot of enjoyment from this video, then please do subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video. It goes a long way in helping smaller channels like this one actually appear in the YouTube algorithm. Bye bye.